Welcome to Africa Conference 2025. It's that time of the year when our movement, Fixed Politics, celebrates the students who have graduated after rigorous time in the SPPG, the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, to the activities that announce their graduation ceremony. And so the Africa Conference normally takes a topical issue concerning our continent's democracy, and we have guests who are brothers and sisters from other countries in Africa join us to do a deep dive into the state of democracy on our continent. And usually, the Africa Conference does deliver really good follow-on activities that we rigorously embark on all through the year. And so this year, we know that democracy is in a struggle of legitimacy across the world. But as I said to someone in New York just some days ago, when he was saying that it's not just Africa. My country, the United States, is also in a struggle for its democracy. I just looked at the person and I said, the United States can afford to be in a struggle, but not Africa, because we haven't even started in terms of getting to development. And so to be in crisis is a double whammy, and we're decided as a movement not to allow that to prevail. And so it is my delight to really welcome you all and to look forward to an incredible conversation on this year's theme of democracy in crisis, and are finding our own African pathway to being those that will be known as claimants of the 21st century.
Speaking of energy, we are now going to invite our keynote speaker. I have had the pleasure of meeting him several times, and I'm always thinking, this kind of quiet, reserved gentleman, what is really going on, behind the head, and behind the glasses, sorry. And it's what I do know is that he is not in fixed politics by chance. And this is always, when you hang out, I tell you, choose your friends, choose who you hang out with. When I hang out with Dr. Obi, I know that I'm going to be meeting the right people at the right place at the right time. She has an amazing quality, by the way, of finding, recognizing talent and bringing it together to achieve things. Dr. Frank Weke Jr. was the 2023 gubernatorial candidate of the All Progressive Grand Alliance in Enugu State. So he knows what he's talking about. I am a politician myself. I'm always like, have you ever done it? Have you ever tried? So he has done it. He has tried. But he's also a former minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He held 3 portfolios between 2003 and 2007. He has also served as Chief of Staff to the Enugu State government and later Director General of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Please give him a hand. He's a statesman, a public intellectual, reform leader, and he is the chair of Fixed Politics Nigeria.
Sufficient, or I have to hold the mic? Thank you so much. Ka, you're very, very kind. Thank you. And your energy is infectious. It's very difficult not to get excited, not to feel energized each time you're in the same space with Ka. I'm deeply honored to have the opportunity to deliver this keynote address today. And of course, let me just reinforce my earlier welcome to our compatriots from across the continent. I recognize our dear founder and my big sister, Obieze Kwesili, of course, our CEO, Alero Aida Otobo, and the very distinguished members of parliament, whether it's from Gambia, of course, from Senegal, and the eminent gentleman and lady from Ghana. My dear compatriots, I'm going to be talking to you or speaking to you about on the theme from crisis to credibility, reimagining African democracies that work for the people. And of course, as the conference was being put together, we were deeply conscious of the importance of speaking to contemporary issues, issues that reflect our daily realities across the continent. So, distinguished leaders from our continent and beyond, esteemed members of civil society, the media, development partners, patriots, and fellow concerned Africans, welcome to Abuja. And it is my honor as chair of Fixed Politics Initiative to welcome you to Abuja for this Africa conference. This year is particularly special because we mark 5 years of the Fixed Politics journey, and in just 2 days, we will celebrate the graduation of the 5th cohort of the unconventional leaders from the School of Politics, Policy, and Governance. So to all of you gathered here, leaders and learners, advocates and builders of democracy, thank you for joining us as we reflect, reimagine, and rededicate ourselves to the urgent task of building African democracies that truly work for the people. My address will aim for brevity, while offering what I consider to be salient points that I hope will serve as compasses to guide our shared journey towards better governance systems. Governance systems. When we discuss democracy, ladies and gentlemen, the conversation often begins elsewhere. The temptation is to see it as an imported system of governance, regarded as the best in the modern world. We think about Athens as the origin of the system, or London, the UK, United Kingdom, or Washington. We recite models we did not make, systems we did not create, systems we did not design, histories that are not our own. But if democracy is meant to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people, then surely we must ask, which people? Whose definition was this? And I believe that the first step to resolving our crisis of leadership and development in Africa is that whatever system we adopt must earn credibility. It must earn to ensure some form of authenticity in its envisioning and in its practice. So the United Kingdom and several European countries still maintain a monarchy, for instance, within their democratic framework. China, though not a liberal democracy, has built a system of governance that works for its own context, cultural, and development, reminding us that no nation simply or should simply import or embrace a model wholesale. Each of these nations I have mentioned have adapted governance systems unique to their own identity, their history, and their cultural idiosyncrasies. So long before the colonial masters foisted a control-induced version of democracy on us, Africa had democracies. Are you curious about this? Our societies had systems of governance that were participatory, that were accountable, and rooted in community or communal values. However, the injurious belief that only things invented by the West actually exist has eroded our collective ability to revisit our history and identity and our capacity to chart a sustainable path forward. So, the colonial enterprise did not merely redraw borders. It upended the very foundations of governance in African societies. In Igbo land, for example, Britain imposed a system of warrant chiefs, where prior there existed no centralized rulers. They had never existed prior to the arrival of the British. So longer standing assemblies of elders, age grades, and women's councils that once kept governance balanced were displaced, leading to alienation and unrest, significant unrest. Across West Africa, communal land tenure gave way to colonial ordinances and taxation. Leaders who had once derived their legitimacy from service to the people were reduced to tax collectors for the empire, the British Empire, redirecting accountability away from the community and toward distant capitals. Justice, too, was transformed. Restorative systems in which elders mediated disputes to preserve harmony were supplanted by punitive colonial courts that often criminalized indigenous practices. So consider the implications of this system for a moment. Leaders were accountable to their people, not just to themselves. And I'm talking about the indigenous systems. Leaders were accountable to their people, not to themselves or a privileged elite. This accountability was not just a moral imperative, but a practical necessity. The reason being that it ensured that power was exercised responsibly and that leaders remained connected to the needs and aspirations of their people. The second aspect of the systems we had is the fact that it embodied inclusion and participation. So amongst the Igbo, for instance, governance was famously decentralized. Villages were run not by kings, but assemblies of elders, age-grade associations, and women's councils. Every segment of society, therefore, had a voice. Every segment of society, therefore, had a voice. Power was dispersed. It was contested and negotiated. It was messy at times, but it was inclusive. And no single hand controlled the destiny of the whole. This participatory approach to governance had several benefits. It ensured that decision-making was collective and representative, rather than concentrated in the hands of a few. It fostered a sense of community and shared responsibility as people worked together to address common challenges. And it helped to prevent the abuse of power by providing checks and balances on leaders. The third quality of our indigenous governance system is the matter of community legitimacy. In the Ashanti Kingdom of present-day Ghana, chiefs were not imposed from above. At least this is what the history books say. They were chosen by consensus within royal lineages. Even the political influence of women was sharply curtailed. Sorry, I think I have my... Yeah, sorry, just a moment. I think I have my pages mixed. Sorry, just a moment. I have my pages. Just 1 second. Now, even the political influence of women were sharply curtailed. So, in the southwest Nigeria, for instance, figures such as the Yoruba, Yaolode, or the Ashanti or Hema, who had once wielded real authority in governance, found their roles diminished under colonial administrations who chose to recognize only male chiefs. So they began to distort our own systems because of their incursion into our own territory. So by the time independence came, what had been plural, participatory, and community-driven had been replaced by centralized, extractive, and alien systems. This is the crisis that we inherited, and tragically, one that has grown into the monster, which, in my own view, we just have to kill that monster. And so today, I will highlight 3 features of African democracy or systems of governance that stand out across different societies and that remain essential if we are to move from crisis to credibility. The first is accountability. In Oyo Empire in southwest Nigeria, the Alaafin was a powerful king, but he was never absolute. The Oyomesi, a council of chiefs, could compel him to abdicate if he failed the people. They will send him an empty calabash, an unmistakable symbol that his reign had lost legitimacy. Leadership carried weight, but so did responsibility. And no ruler in our pre-colonial indigenous systems was above correction. I really have my papers mixed up. I'm sorry. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Sorry. So, across these examples, from Oyo Empire to the traditional Igbo society, to Ashanti and to Somali, we see patterns. Leaders who were accountable to councils, a value-based political class. Leaders who were accountable to councils, these were a value-based political class. Citizens who were engaged in decision-making, they had to be enlightened, they were empowered, and they were engaged. And these are the kinds of people that we are craving to re-establish, to re-emerge. And that is the work that my sister and dear friend, Mrs. Tito Aderoju, is focused on as co-chair of Work Study Group 1, which is charged with emerging an enlightened, empowered electorate. Now, the communities that confer legitimacy, these were the strong regulators and institutions. That's what they were. And so what I have painted for you this morning is that in pre-colonial, indigenous African society, we actually had a balanced triangle. We had a balanced triangle that represented the 3 pillars that we now preach today, we are promoting, and we are seeking to establish a balance and equilibrium on. So you see from my submissions that the triangular pillars of democracy are deeply rooted in our identity as Africans. It's there. These are African traditions, and they show us that democracy, in the way it is currently described, that works for the people, is embedded in who we are as Africans. But I acknowledge that the modern state is not the village square. We live in nations of millions, not just clans or towns. But the principles, ladies and gentlemen, I submit most respectfully, are the same. Democracy will not thrive here because it looks like Europe or America. It will thrive because it looks like Africa. It's credible, rooted, inclusive, accountable, and alive to the needs of the people that governments are instituted to serve. We already see this in Botswana, without prejudice to the difficulties they now have, with its steady economic growth, at least until recently, some form of political stability, and decades of credible elections. Look at Mauritius, diverse, small, but punching far above its weight with strong institutions. And there is Rwanda. Some call it an outlier. It's democratic, but not in the regular sense. A country led for many years by one man, yet admired for its order, its rising economy, and its social cohesion. And we must mention what I consider to be its astonishing transformation. And so Rwanda may not fit neatly into Western textbooks, but it tells us something important. Legitimacy is not only about the structure of government, but about the citizens' belief that their government works for them. So, maybe, ladies and gentlemen, this is what is at the heart of democracy. A democracy that works for the people is not about ticking boxes of existing models, in my view. It's not even about throwing away everything colonialism left us. There are some good things. And we're responsible enough, we're pragmatic enough to recognize these good aspects and embrace them and reinforce them. Maybe it is about fusing the best of what we have, inherited, with the best of who we are. And so, as I conclude, we must place the picture of what was and what can be in front of us, using a guide to build democracies that reflect our values of communal growth, accountability, participation, and legitimacy. These, in my humble opinion, must be the pillars of any democracy that works for our people. That is the journey from crisis to credibility, and a task we must not relent on pursuing until we accomplish our aspirations for our continent. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Really wonderful. I felt like, it was the ED who was in all the prep meetings, but your speech was as if you had been prepping with us for all these months. Thank you so much. Yes, please, let us give Abata, 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 Abako, 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 Abata, Abata, Abata. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's a fantastic lead up into some of the conversations that we are going to have, because democracy is African. There are pillars of democracy in our history, in our culture, and it is up to us to build African democracy, reaching within our own history, within our own culture, and also embracing everything that we have encountered in the rest of the world to have a democracy which is African. So for the next part, I'm going to introduce to you, you will have noticed in fixed politics that we are moving with several generations at a time. And on our facilitation team, it's the same. So I want to call up my colleague and co-facilitator. We've been working for months together, Alice Malongte. Please give her a hand. She is a consultant at Strategies and an excellent facilitator. Alice, it seems as if you have something to say.
Yes, for sure. So thanks first. I'm honored that you introduced me this way. Bonjour à tous. Good morning, everyone. Great. We want energy today. I hope you have energy. Great. So I'm really honored that I have been well introduced by my boss that I want to introduce also. So it's an honor for me. She's Kawala. You already know her. She has been there for 3 times, I think. So she's an entrepreneur. she's an activist, and she's a Cameroonian political leader. So as an entrepreneur, she's the CEO of a consulting firm that is called Strategies and specializing in leadership and management. And with 30 years of experience supporting multinationals and also technical and financial partners in transforming their system and also functioning and implementing their projects. And now, as a political leader, she's the president of the Cameroon People's Party, which is called CPP. And in 2011, yes, she was the first woman to run for the presidential elections. So we were really honored to have her as a candidate. And she challenged a long-term president, the oldest president that you know all. I don't want to cite his name. So, and due to her political engagement, she received several international awards. And today, her main concern, her main focus is working for the political transition in Cameroon and building functional states around Africa. So this morning, she will set the scene and present some trends and facts about democracy and the crisis of legitimacy. So please give her a heartful ovation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice. So, yes, we're going to talk, and I have to watch the time because this is my favorite topic. So, I can go long, so I have to watch the time. But we do want to, as we talk about democracy, I know that SPPG is all about evidence. Let's not just talk about the democracy in the air. Let's take a look at some of the evidence. So let's put the slides and see where we are on this democracy in Africa today. So we're going to look at perception. We're going to take a look at democratic institutions. Honorable from Gambia has already begun to mention electoral integrity. And we'll talk a little bit about delivery of services. The chair already mentioned some of our good practices that we can look at and how we are responding to the fact that democracy is not delivering for Africa. We are seduced by the military regimes. But we also have some interesting youth movements. So let's just take a look and see. First of all, people are always asking the question, is democracy Africans? Do Africans even want the democracy? Or are you people working on democracy? Is it even something that people want? The numbers tell us yes. Unequivocally, yes. This is Afrobarometer. Everybody in here should know Afrobarometer, I hope, because it is one of the greatest instruments that we have for getting evidence about our democracy. Looking at 18 to 35-year-olds, this is 75% of Africans, by the way. 35 and under is 75% of Africans. So the 18 to 35-year-olds in 39 African countries, they discovered that 72% of young people voted in their last election. And some countries are having very high voter participation, like Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Seychelles. 41% of youth feel close to a political party. 62% occasionally or frequently discuss politics with their family and friends. And 47% have attended a community meeting during the previous year. So youth, contrary to what we think, are engaged and involved in politics. Nigeria does not score so well on this index. But continent-wide, youth are participating. 42% of them have joined to raise an issue. So like SPPG students have come together to say, we don't have water in my neighborhood, we don't have electricity, 4 out of 10, it's not bad. And 37% have contacted some kind of government official, some kind of governance official to interact with them. And then an element that we will see, when the youth get tired, I said 75% of the population under 35, when they get tired, it blows up. So 1 out of every 10 African youths has participated in a political protest during this survey period. This is a very interesting graph, and this is where we see that Africans prefer democracy over any other kind of government. But the older they get, so the 56 years and above, that is some of us, 68% of us prefer democracy. When you look at the youth, it's slightly less, 64%. Most Africans still reject military rule, despite the seduction of the Sahelians. Most still reject. But unfortunately, the trend in this is going in the wrong direction. We are more and more accepting of military rule. But the numbers are still about 69 to 65% who reject military rule. And what we definitely reject, that's why you heard my countrywoman earlier saying we just have to get rid of one-man rule. In Cameroon, we've had one guy for 43 years. It just has to end. And 80% of Africans feel that, yeah, this is no good. We also don't have a very good perception of our people who are running things. 32% for the older people, 40% of the younger people see most officials in the presidency as being corrupt. And many, more than half of Africans at all age brackets, but 60% of the youth are not at all satisfied with the way democracy is working in their countries. Yeah, I think some of them are in this room. And then we look at when they say they are not satisfied. Why do they feel like this democracy thing is not delivering for us? Here is the approval rating with regard to creating jobs. These are the 3 most important things to young Africans. Give us jobs, create jobs. And you see here that only 19% of young Africans feel like their government is doing a good job in creating jobs. Managing the economy, only 25% of young Africans feel like their country is managing the economy well. And less than 50% of Africans in all categories feel like their country is doing a good job when it comes to health, education, and other services. So we can conclude from these graphs, yes, Africans want democracy. No, democracy is not delivering for Africans, not yet. So, we have also in Africa established, not only in Africa, but we have a lot of African countries in this situation. We've established what is called an electoral autocracy. This is an autocratic regime that holds elections. We can tell you all about that in Cameroon. We hold elections every 7 years, and somehow the same person wins. So these are electoral autocracies. The Nigerians should not be laughing too much. No, you should not be laughing too much because I used to think you guys were ahead of us on the game. Then when I looked closely, I said, there are gangs in power. In our gang in Cameroon, they decided to keep the same guy there every time. In your gang, they switch it amongst the gang members. Sorry. Don't kick me out. I'm born in Ibadan. You can't even kick me out. So we see this electoral autocracy, and here you see in Africa, the dark brown is closed autocracy. So these guys are not even pretending. They are not having elections. They are not, the dark brown is people who are like, we are in charge and that's it. Deal with it. We are not going anywhere. Okay? The sort of lighter brown, orangish is the electoral autocracies who say we figured out how to use elections to keep ourselves in power. And the green or bluish green there is electoral democracy. And as you can see, they've put Nigeria there in electoral democracy. I'm like, okay. Because I think it's also important for us. That's what the chair said. It's not about ticking the box. It's not about saying, oh, we have multiple parties, tick. Oh, we held an election, tick. Oh, we did this. Whereas things are not fundamentally changing. Okay. So, I will go through this quickly because it's also good, and the chair mentioned some of these countries. African countries are doing it. We are not mad. We are not dreaming. There are African countries who are democratic and they are delivering on democracy. So, he mentioned Mauritius. I think Mauritius is at every index in Africa, you pick up the index Mauritius. When they have done badly, they are number 2. When they have done very badly, they are number 2. But they are at the top of almost every index, and they've been there for decades. He mentioned Botswana. Many Africans even don't know this. Botswana is the country in the world that held the highest economic growth rate in history. For over 10 years, Botswana had double-digit growth. Double-digit growth means 10% or above for over 10 years. And they used to have a little problem because they had elections and it was the same party who would win. It was considered good elections, but this year, last year, they changed. They have a very young president, and unfortunately for him, the Botswana depends on diamonds, and the diamond market is crashing. So unfortunately for this young man, he's going to have a tough time. But still, we can hold Botswana up high as people who are doing it. Namibia is not doing badly. They got a woman president. Not doing badly. With regular elections, they are very strong on political rights, but they are also delivering on water and light. That point you brought up, Dr. Obi, when I travel around the world and people come up and say, yes, we too in America, we are suffering, our democracy is not doing so well. We too in Europe, I always ask, you get water, you get light. We are not in the same discussion. Yes, because I don't want to be discussing with people who have water and light. Then we say, oh, our democracy is doing this. No, we are in different leagues. Me, I'm in Division 10 over here. I haven't figured out yet. You are in Division 1 complaining about some small discomfort. No. So it's important for us to be realistic about where we are. Cape Verde. Cape Verde is another beautiful story, African story. Cape Verde years ago had a big change maker. They set up their elections, they set up their democracy, their little island, but boy, are they delivering on democracy. So we have some good examples. And these are the top of the line. If you get to mixed bag, there are also some very nice examples. Okay, so those are those who are doing well. And of course, we have those who are camping on authoritarianism. We have 54 countries. 50% are autocratic. 19% are free, and 31% are partly free. So the road is still long for us. And unfortunately, as we've said, the world is backsliding on democracy, and Africa is backsliding with it, unfortunately. Amongst what is called the worst of the worst, these are the worst performing autocracies, you have 6 African countries. And you see, if you note, most of these countries have extreme violence, are in extreme conflict, some of them for decades. All of us are looking at Gaza right now. The worst humanitarian crisis in the world is in Sudan. Yes. And as Africans, because we don't talk about our own stuff, because people are like, oh, the Western media. I'm like, what's wrong with your own mouth? Talk about your stuff. Talk about your stuff. Make noise about your stuff. I am in such admiration of the Palestinians right now. These people, bombs are dropping on their heads, but they're out there campaigning, going to meetings, doing everything to let the world know what is happening to them. When it's happening in Africa, it's not somebody else who's going to come and talk about us. It is only us to talk about us. So we have Niger in 2023 that went from partly free to not free. Tanzania. Sister Obi, I'm always hiding my head a bit on Tanzania because we were like, oh, woman president and so on. That's why we have to look at the systems. We have to look at the systems. Unfortunately, Tanzania is backsliding on political freedoms. And then whenever we have non-state armed groups, Nigeria knows this, northern Nigeria, northern Cameroon, we know this. Whenever it gets to the stage where some groups have armed themselves, autocracy increases. Because governments feel like we can kill anybody, we can violate rights, because you people are, the definition of the state is that the state has monopoly on violence. That is one of the definitions of a state. You can't have a state and have different people having control of violence. It's only the state which can have. And once that control has escaped it, most states increase their own violence to be able to get back control. So we see a lot of abuse in the fight against Boko Haram, whether it is on the Nigerian side, on the Cameroonian side, and so on. And this is a very dangerous situation to be in. So, we see here freedom in the world. That's what it looks like. The green parts are free. The purple is not free. So you can see how Africa dominates in the not free. We have a few specks of green. Thank goodness for the Southern Africans because they are leading the charge for us. But many, many parts of Africa are not free. So the seduction of military regimes. Many Africans feel like, well, this thing is not working, so let's give it to a guy with a gun. And this here, you see a real generational gap here, because those of us who are older, and who have seen those guys with guns multiple times, we are like, that is not the way to go. But we have a young African population, 75% under 35. So they've never experienced this thing before. And they are like, well, let's give it a try, you know. We're going to hear more from Suleiman about what that giving it a try actually means in the lives of citizens. We now have a military belt across the Sahel and in Northern Africa, stepping into North Africa. All of these, where you see the dark green, are military-dominated regimes. They are either outright military regimes or a military person has put on a civilian coat and is still very much ruling with the military. And in red there, you see the evolution of coup d'etats. That's how many coup d'etats we had in 2013, and that's how many were attempted in 2020. So, some people react by going towards military regime, but others react by coming together collectively and taking action. I do want Suleiman and Moma to stand up. Can you please stand up, please? Please give them a hand. You can take your seats. I'll tell you why I said to give him a hand. Because we are in the presence of movements that have actually brought down dictatorships. Give them yes. Yes. It's not an easy thing. It takes years and years to do. In the case of Senegal, they have managed to stay on the path. Also, thank you, Pastef, because it almost fell back in 2024, and Pastef said, no way, it's not going to fall back. And they managed to stay the course. Burkina, as Suleiman mentioned, has backslid completely. But that does not take away from the fact that these are citizens, ordinary citizens, who got together and said enough is enough, and they were able to bring the thing down and start rebuilding. So, citizen movements are doing all of these things. Defending democracy, fighting corruption. You also have some nice citizen movements here in Nigeria. Huh? Yeah, there you have some nice stuff going on. So they're doing all of these things. Right now, Africans' youth are on the move. They are on the move. As we speak, Madagascar is in the streets. It took them 3 days. The government, the president has already dissolved his government. So they've already got a first win. They are trying to, and they're pushing on. And they're facing a lot of state violence, but they are there, they are pushing on. Madagascar, this beautiful island in Africa, which has amazing, Madagascar is the #1 supplier of vanilla in the world. Why are these people some of the poorest people in the world? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And they're fed up, and they're on the streets right now as we speak. I could not believe this when I saw this. Morocco, the kingdom. I don't know if people know Morocco. Moroccans believe in their king, man. It's a culture which is really centered. You know, the kingdom is also the spiritual head of the nation. So when I saw Moroccan youth out on the street, and guess what? It is because Morocco is hosting the World Cup. And the youth are saying, why are you building stadiums when we don't have hospitals? Why are you building stadiums when we don't have schools? So the thing I love about citizen movements is that they are always talking about the real deal. You know, politicians sometimes feel like they can manipulate citizen movement. When citizens really come out on the street in their numbers, they are talking about the real issues, okay? Of course, we saw Nigeria. After NSARS, we saw N-band governance last year, and I am certain that Nigerians, it's percolating under the, under the surface. Our Kenyan colleagues are coming. Our Kenyan colleagues are some, because this is one of the stories we want to hear. How Kenyan youth, they stopped the finance bill. They stopped it. They were able to negotiate things with government, and they came out a year later, follow-up. They did follow-up protest. They did a protest. They didn't get everything they want. They came back the following year and said, we are following up on what we want. So this gives a lot of hope. But we're going to discuss the strengths and the weaknesses of these citizen movements. How can we make them stronger, more constructive, ensure that they don't backslide, ensure that they actually reach their objective of building functional states. So, I'm just going to, oh yes, even Uganda. So by the way, some of us in the worst autocracies are out on the streets. Uganda, Togo, Cameroon, we are moving. I know it looks from afar as if, what are these ones doing for 43 years? But people are on the streets moving even in the most difficult countries. So we have to take that into account, and it has to give us hope. It has to give us hope. Tunisia, they got rid of the dictator. They had rough moments. They have somebody in place. That person is not delivering and is suppressing rights, and they are back out on the streets. They are like, no, this is not what we wanted. So I'm just going to go through this one. The question I'm going to leave you with, and the question for all of us as we go through the next 2 days is, it is clear we as Africans want democracy, but democracy is yet to deliver. We have a youth bulge, we have a huge population of youth that if we do not contain, because I've talked about these citizen movements, I talked about protests. The good side of it is it's citizens standing up. The challenging side of it is that it can go wrong. It can get violent. It can get destructive. So we have a responsibility to channel this youth energy, to enable youths to actually engage and change, make the change that they want. So, of course, over the next 2 days, we are going to be looking at what do we, as Africans, we are the ones we are waiting for, what do we, as Africans, need to do to make the democracy deliver for us? Thank you very much. And with that, right? You know me, and my data is always in my back pocket. Yes, so we are going to take a little break, have some coffee, have some energy. Please be back in the room at 12 o'clock, please. We have exciting panels for you. I would first like to invite Honorable Fatoumata Njai, Member of the National Assembly, Republic of the Gambia, to join me up here on stage. She's a Gambian politician, strong advocate for gender equality and youth empowerment. She chairs the Gender and Children's Welfare Committee, and she also serves at the Pan-African Parliament. She used to be the only female Gambian representative at ECOWAS, and she has been a tireless voice for women's leadership, social justice, and inclusive development across Africa. Welcome once again, Honorable. And then I remember when we were preparing, his name came up straight away when we said, you know, how do we think about this whole idea of traditional African governance, and, you know, what do we learn from there for today? And the Nigerians in the room said, Professor Jibril Ibrahim, please. He's a scholar and public intellectual on democracy and governance. He's a distinguished political scientist, researcher, and advocate for democracy and good governance. Right now, he is the director of the Center for Democracy and Development, a West African research and advocacy organization. He's a political science with a PhD for the Institut d'études politiques in Bordeaux. Ah, prof. Je comprends maintenant. Because I came in and he's speaking fluent French to me, and I was like, okay, now I know why and how. So welcome, Professor Jibril Ibrahim. And from the think tank Wati, we have had Wati with us all 3 years of the Africa Conference, and it's always a pleasure to welcome. We have Hadijet Kangulin. She is the communication officer for Wati Think Tank. She's a development advocate and women's rights specialist with extensive experience in gender equality across Africa. And she has a multidisciplinary background in political communication, data analysis, and international relations. And she's working, doing all that, and still pursuing her MBA at this time. Oh, you finished. Oh, fantastic. You got the MBA? All right. Can we get a hand, please? All right. Wonderful. And finally, as we've said, we're not going to have a one-directional communication here. I'm going to invite Alice Malonte to join me for us to be able to have this conversation together with our panelists. So, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, for you to be here. Yeah, this one is yours. I have one. Okay. And we want to, just a minute. I know. Thank you. We want to start off the conversation. You know, I feel like African stories don't get told enough. I don't know how many of you know the story of the Gambia, because Gambians did something amazing. They had not only a dictator, but I think, honestly, one of the craziest people in the world running a country. This was a guy who said he could cure AIDS with his prayers or his something like this. I mean, you would hear statements from Yaya Jammeh, who was the Gambian president, and wonder, what on earth is going on now? In 2017, Gambians were able to put an end to the decades-long rule of Yaya Jammeh. Honorable Njai, if you could tell us a little bit about how you did that, but then also, that's a nice story, but it's in the past. Now you've established a democracy. And, you know, opposition is always an easy position, I tell people. It's nice to be outside of government and criticizing. Now, when you're sitting in the seat as you are trying to build a democracy as Gambians, what are some of the challenges you face? Are you on the right track? Or should we fear backsliding like some of the countries we have been talking about? What is the Gambian journey? Please, Honorable.
Thank you so much. I think stories are best told by those that live the stories, because we have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it was a wonderful story in 2017 when we all came together to remove a dictator, thinking that that was the end of the bad. We are yet to get rid of the dictator because we have a dictator to date. In 2017, women came together, and thanks to the women, I would emphasize that. We had what was called the Kalama Revolution. Members of the opposition were jailed unjustly, and women came together to bring all political parties together. So I think the best solution is unity, coming together for a common cause. And that was what removed a dictator. And I believe in 2026, coming together would also solve our problems, but not retaining what was. 2016, we all jubilated. 3 years along the line, an independently elected president formed a political party, embracing what was removed. So as we speak, the Speaker of the House was from the dictator's party. Likewise, the Deputy Speaker, and over 80% of our ministers. So was that a solution? No. It was old wine in new bottles. And I think we need new wine, we need new bottles. That is the solution. What is the challenge? Corruption. Hiding, trying to hide behind your bad deeds. Because in 2016, when we elected our president, our current president, we thought he was corrupt-free. We looked for a decent person. I'm not going to stand here and say he is not corrupt, because he is. I think we should be truthful with what we say, and that's the only solution. That is our problem. If we hide behind the truth, then we fail. And I believe the challenge, first of all, is poverty. With poverty, people's integrity, their dignity is compromised. I believe in being poor and containing my dignity. In 2019, I saw the route that the coalition was going, and I attempted to take the leadership of my political party because I saw that our campaign promises of 2016 were not being fulfilled. And I attempted, and my party, which was part of the coalition, collided with our president to expel me from my party. Because probably they thought that being expelled, I wouldn't dare to contest and go back to Parliament. I went as independent. Against all odds, I went back. So one of the challenges is, one of the solutions is not giving up. Because the best way to fix the problem is to try. Because if you don't try, you can't fix it. I went through hell and back, but again, the youths, thanks to the youths of Gambia, I was re-elected. I am an advocate of women. I could have stopped advocating for women in 2021, 2022, but I said no. I will not blame them for going against me because it is not out of necessity. It wasn't out of their conviction. It was out of necessity because they needed to feed. And I said, if I do not advocate for them, they will continue compromising their integrity for what is not right. So I'm still a woman's advocate, irrespective of women standing up publicly to go against me going back to Parliament. At that time, we had a female speaker, a female vice president. I came up with a women's bill to increase the women representation in my parliament by adding 17 seats specifically for women. It was negated by the speaker, who was female, and the vice president, who was female, was there at the parliament to make sure that he influenced it negatively because they thought I was doing it for me to go back to parliament. I will not go for specific seats for women because I think that should be left for women who are not like me. And that is one challenge because we are timid. I'm a very shy person, but I think the shyness is just a shell because deep down, I'm very daring, and I think we should all be.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you so much. I think you're just a quiet person. I noticed that since yesterday. But I think in French, they have the phrase la force tranquille, a quiet strength. Yes, and you get that from Honorable straight away. I think this is so interesting. Like you say, the stories should be told by the people who live it, because my impression of Gambia was totally different from what you are describing. You know, we sit outside, and you are right. And I think this is a lesson for us as we go into the thematic labs. It's not all to get rid of the dictator. You have to then build the systems. And we have to forget that the dictator is just the visible part of the iceberg that consists of the dictatorship. And you see how they were able to come back. Despite, like I say, Yahya Jammeh was, we as Cameroonians today, we feel ashamed when we have this 92-year-old man who can barely walk and so on. But Gambians used to be so ashamed of Yahya Jammeh. So you would think that when you get rid of that, you would be ready for something new. But we have to keep in mind it's a system. And for those who are going to work on state capture, I think the state capture thematic lab has some key elements there. Hadijat, I'm going to come to you. Wati does a lot of work. If you don't know about Wati, Google them, get onto their website and subscribe. My problem with Wati is that I don't have enough time to read all of the things. I see everything. This is interesting. This is interesting. So they're doing really fantastic work. And Hadijat, maybe you can tell us, where is democracy working? Where, we know where it's not working, but where is it working, and what are some of the elements of what we call working?
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je vais y aller en français. Donc, on est d'accord qu'actuellement le monde connaît une crise de la démocratie qui est sans contexte et sans précédent. Vous avez montré des chiffres, j'en avais, mais je pense qu'on va aller directement. Et aujourd'hui, il y a quand même des exemples positifs. Parmi eux, on peut citer des pays comme la Zambie, qui connaît quand même des élections et des alternances. Il y a aussi des pays comme le Cap-Vert qui, depuis les années 90, a régulièrement des élections, une alternance et aussi des institutions électorales qui sont respectées. Nous avons aussi d'autres pays comme le Botswana, vous en avez parlé, qui a connu aussi une alternance aussi et un système électoral pacifique et le jeu électoral est respecté. À côté de ça, nous avons d'autres pays comme le Sénégal qui, malgré des périodes électorales sous haute tension, on peut citer 2012 et 2024, a quand même réussi à avoir l'alternance par les urnes, ce qui est important quand même. Et nous avons aussi le Libéria, on n'en parle pas souvent, après la période de guerre civile, qui depuis connaît quand même une stabilité politique avec des alternances, notamment je pense en 2017, si je ne me trompe pas. Et donc tous ces exemples-là montrent que la démocratie n'est pas forcément un système qui ne convient pas aux pays africains. C'est plus la manière dont elle est exécutée, la manière dont les institutions sont mises en place, est-ce qu'ils sont respectés, c'est le jeu démocratique qui est important, le système. Donc il est important pour les pays africains de s'inspirer de ce qui marche et de continuer sur cette voie-là et du coup d'adapter ce qui ne marche pas pour aller encore plus loin. Parce que ces pays que j'ai cités, tout n'est pas parfait là-bas, mais au moins les systèmes démocratiques évoluent et on voit que ces pays dans la zone africaine ou dans leur zone sont des pays quand même qui se distinguent et c'est très important de les reconnaître.
Merci beaucoup. Allô? Merci beaucoup. Alice, là, depuis que nos intervenants parlent, je te regarde parce que c'est les sujets qui te tiennent à cœur, la représentativité des femmes, les institutions fortes, mais les institutions africaines. Je sais que tu as une question pour le prochain intervenant. Donc, je te laisse la poser dans ce sens-là.
I hope, yes, okay, it's working. So I see that Honorable Fatoumata Njai spoke about the youth and also how they were able to chase away the last president, who is Yahya Jammeh. And also Hadijet mentioned that there are some countries in Africa where we can see that democracy is working because they have put the systems in place and they are monitoring it. But most of the time we are speaking about decolonizing our states. So when we speak about decolonizing our state, we are saying that we need to think about our traditions. How can we find values in our traditions so that we can bring it into the modern system? So I have a question for Professor Jibrin. And the question is as follows. So, Professor Jibrin, please can you tell us what are some of the key pillars of democracy that we find in some forms of African traditional governance? And also, are there countries which have been able to integrate these key pillars from traditional governance into their modern democracies with success?
Thank you for that question. It makes me feel a bit an old man for the simple reason that when I started studying political science, it was one of the exam questions set for us. This PS 102, African Political Systems. And the program at that time, there was a whole section on traditional African democracy in modern political systems. And we studied 3 case studies: Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi. And the arguments for these 3 countries were all very similar. That to make sure our democracy is authentic, let us base that democracy on our traditions. So there was a study of African traditional democracies, and they came up with this Ubuntu philosophy, all the three countries, which is a philosophy of humanism with fundamental democratic traits. The first is participation. Every member of the community should engage in decision making. So when whatever issue comes up, everybody in an inclusive system should come and make their own contributions. The methodology was the Palava methodology, in which, as the saying goes, when there's a problem, Africans sit under the tree, they discuss and debate till they agree. So the strategic objective is to reach a consensus through the participation of everybody. And the basic idea is that when you continue to talk till you all agree, the best reasoning will emerge. And that was what will define the system. So these three countries all adopted this integration of traditional African democracy into their modern political system. The question then became, well, how will it work? The way it will work, they argued, was because everybody is participating, because everybody is in the conversation. You don't want the diversion of separate political parties. So all of them banned multipartism, and there was one political party to which every member of the community will work. And that, of course, was a strategic error in thinking that eliminating parties will improve the quality of the conversation. Of course, what happened immediately, you had only one party, and there's a president who is the boss of the party, is that every conversation that criticizes the president then ends up becoming an attack on democracy, an attack on the system. And all the three countries ended up jailing all the opposition figures except those who agree to join the party. And they developed into political tyrannies where nobody could express dissent. Now, does that mean there aren't good qualities you can copy from traditional African democracies? I think there are, but the issue is, how do you do it? Is it an alternative to modern democracy, which is based not just on the Constitution, but on constitutionalism, which means political behavior has limitations and boundaries set by the Constitution that everybody is subjected to? I think that was a strategic error, because the interesting thing about the debate on democracy